Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the MXGP podcast show, because the King has returned, and that carries two meanings, because A, Jeffrey Herlings is back atop the MXGP podium, and B, Adam Wheeler has returned from his maiden MXGP voyage of 2025. So this is very much going to be an Herlings appreciation episode, but also a podcast version of a vlog as we relive all of the conversations and controversy that my co-host dove into on German soil. That was, of course, round 10 of the 2025 FIM Motocross World Championship, and a particularly interesting one at that. Thank you, of course, to Polisport and ProX Racing Parts for their support. But without further ado, Adam Wheeler, you are back. You are from On Track Off Road. Are you feeling similarly buoyant as me in Missouri last year? Would you describe your emotional level on that plane?
I'm knackered, Lewis, and there's only one king of this podcast, and it's neither me nor Jeffrey, who's yet to come on. So that's one area in which you're failing. You're a bit of a fake king at the moment. But yes, it's been exhausting. I was obviously working the British MotoGP, then went straight to Germany, but it was great to be back in the paddock. It's been far too long. The halfway point of 2025, 20 GPs. In some ways, it was reassuring that Teutschenthal, a Grand Prix venue that was first used, I think, in the mid-1970s, has barely changed. You'll be happy to know the paddock was still the same. When it was hot and sunny, it was dusty. It was like some sort of installment from the Dune film franchise, and then when it rained, it decided to rain quite substantially. But what I will say is that the track comes under a lot of criticism and grief for being very narrow, hard to pass, and that was still pretty much the status quo. Had been worked on half decently. I mean, there was, it was quite softer, and when the rain did come, it kind of morphed and roughened up a little bit and gave a little bit more variation. I mean, Torqueso was one of those gloriously old school incarnations of a Grand Prix layout, and I think people and fans kind of respond to that. I'm not entirely sure if it comes across as well on TV as it does through standing there. And I just have to lastly give props to the German fans who are going absolutely bananas for your former favourite Simon Längenfelder. A disappointing Grand Prix for the local man in the end, wearing that 27 red plate. But there were smoke flares, there were chainsaws, a decibel level that was way higher than the bikes. And it was a pretty glorious celebration of motocross.
Do you feel like, did you leave Teutschenthal with the vibe, I need to be there more? Or did you go there and realise that actually not much has changed? The contacts are as strong as ever, and actually it's a fairly manageable situation in the dynamic that you and I are both in?
A bit of both. You do have the feeling that nothing has changed, but then, there's a much kind of younger demographic. I mean, being the first Grand Prix of the year, the mechanics are younger, the riders are younger. It was interesting seeing, of course, Ducati in the paddock with their huge kind of promotional flags and awning set up for the first time, and to see the scale of a setup like Fantic, for example. A little bit of both, a kind of a tiny element of fish out of water, but then also a lot of familiarity. And my first Grand Prix was the beginning of 2001, and I attended every single one of Motocross of Nations up to the end of 2015. But even, maybe it's just recency bias, but I struggle to remember a city season as chaotic and sort of bewildering as the one that was going on at the moment. I mean, maybe that's also me just entering it for the first time, but it just seemed like there was a lot of talk, a lot of conjecture, and just so much speculation about what's going on. I mean, if you want, we can get into the reasons why, but principally it's because of the somewhat degree of uncertainty around KTM and what their race teams are going to look like in 2026, but then also the fact that two monsters of the sport in Tim Geiger and Jeffrey Herlings are out of contract. So where do they go? What do they do? Who can afford them? And their decisions will depend or decree a little bit the rest of the lineup for the rest of the paddock.
Yeah, it is crazy that we're now in June and we're now past the halfway mark, and really nothing has moved. Kevin Hawkmo signed. That's kind of about it, which is rare for this time of year. And as you picked up on the weekend, and as a rider messaged me on Friday, Nothing is happening. It's not even like we're on the verge of deals being signed, it feels like. And I can't recall a time like this. And ultimately, it does just come down to the fact that Tim Geiser and Jeffrey Herlings are massive names who are rarely up, let alone at the same time.
Yeah, and obviously there are dates in contracts where teams or riders have to give first refusal or notification of other offers. And they're coming up. I mean, the end of June, I imagine would be a hot period. From what we understand, or the talk in the paddock at the weekend was that Herlings has a crunch meeting in the next 2 weeks with KTM to sort of see if he has an offer for 2026, and we can discuss the merits of that. Should he have had an offer earlier, or do KTM have to perhaps cut their cloth accordingly with what they're going to do? People were kind of asking me what I thought of the KTM situation, and I think now that Bajaj are the majority owners of the company, it entirely depends on how they want to go racing. I think we might have mentioned this in the last podcast, but if KTM become adventure bike specialists, or they become off-road specialists, or they go more towards the street and suddenly become proponents of scooter technology, then they'll be wanting to keep like a MotoGP program, which is much bigger in Asia and that side of the world compared to say, comparatively compared to say Europe or other regions. So I mean, the ready to race thing, I think the CEO has already come out and said that's part of KTM's spirit, DNA, history, heritage, whatever. So I think you'll see KTM continue to race. But there were some wild and wacky theories, in Teutschenthal about whether they will actually run a factory team, or it'll be outsourced, or what happens to Husqvarna. There was just a lot of people trying to work out what's going to happen.
Yeah, as far as I know, my educated opinion or guess, I guess, is that at minimum there will be 2 KTM teams in the paddock next year. One potentially could go. And if one does go, it would be maybe the in-house one. I don't know. But I think, and also another thing that is going on is in America, I guess Husqvarna is going and GasGas is staying. But there is absolutely no way that GasGas is coming back to MXGP. And the options are either you have a KTM team and a Husqvarna team, or 2 KTM teams. I think that's but ultimately it could all just stay the same, which is I think is what I would bet on at the moment. But also it probably depends on rider lineup, because if you have Herlings and the Coenens, there's cause for it to stay the same. If you lose the Coenens and just have Herlings, then really why do you need that much infrastructure?
Yeah, the Coenens, they're under contract, for 2026 at least. So if they do jump out of KTM, then it'll be through a compensation package, which for all we know could also be attractive to Austrian, the motorsport division, their current state of play. But I think just to sort of outline, particularly to sort of US listeners or viewers, KTM and MXGP is made up of the Red Bull KTM factory racing team, and it has 2 factions. You have the Austrian side, which has Jeffrey Herlings, Andrea Adamo, and the absent Marc-Antoine Rossi, still recovering from knee surgery. And then you have the Decali faction, of course, was famed by Tony Cairoli's success, but also Jorge Prado delivering those titles. And that's where the Coenens reside, along with Längenfelder. And then you, as part of the group as well, you have the Husqvarna through the Nestan team, which are defending world champions in MX2 with Kai de Wolf and Liam Everts. But then what necessarily people might not know is that KTM have like a factory juniors structure, which stretches into EMX 250. And to the point where a team like SS Gabriel in Sean Simpson's, outfit are being asked to be quite flexible with the riders they field. Guan Donson, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, taking his first podium in EMX 250, so he's an up-and-coming talent. Nicolo Alvisi in EMX 125, that's part of Thomas Travassini's race store team, again KTM factory backed. He's kind of dominating MX 125, so he's another one that KTM will want to get under contract to bring through the system. And so you have this kind of little structure throughout the MXGP paddock. And the big question is, how much does that alter for 2026?
I still feel like KTM has never quite nailed the support program through the EMX ladder, apart from 2015 when they had that trio under Stefan Everts, Watchful Eye with Prado, Natsuki and Muse. It's kind of floundered a little bit since then.
I disagree with you there because KTM had a pretty good factory setup structure. Again, it's been inconsistent, in terms of the teams they've used. I mean, they bounced around. Venroy was agreed. VRT, or is that kind of the same setup? I mean, it gets a bit vague.
Different.
Yeah, in terms of which team were using, it's still stock Austrian machinery, but it has that official link, almost like a satellite development program. And Didi Lacker was responsible for trying to bring through young riders. His most notable success, of course, was the late René Hoffer, who made it up to the point of being a GP winner. And for Austria, that was also a really big thing. So that there has been some structure there, Lewis. I mean, I think also you look at Jorge Prado, Paul Jonass, Jordi Tixier. These were guys that came through programs that have been in place. But the only thing I agree with you that it has sort of the responsibility for that development has changed.
Yeah. It sound from what you just said. I think the best way to describe it is unstructured structure. In a weird way,
because just varying agreements. That's it,
Yeah,
some people,
but I think
some people sign up to be doing it for 2 years, and then KTM suddenly have to find a new partner to be the development.
I think the lack of stability in a partner has made it seem as though KTM are 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and can't quite steady the ship like they have done with Nastan, Dakali, the Austrian side, which has been very bulletproof for as long as I can even remember. Whereas the EMX programs are ever changing.
That's top tier stuff. Yeah, but the EMX stuff is a little bit more difficult because it depends on the rider. I mean, if you look at SS24 Gabriel KTM, then, they had a great year with Kaz Volk, in EMX 250, is now trying to find his way in MX2. So you'd think of Volk as probably the leading light for Dutch motocross, could be someone that enters into the Red Bull KTM factory racing structure for 2026. But then also, Gabriel's team are now running Oriol Oliver, like a sort of. I spoke to him a little bit at the weekend in Germany. A really nice kid and a fantastic riding style, and he's posting sort of top 10, top 6, top 7 results in MX2. It's his last year in MX2. I mean, he reaches his 23rd birthday in like a month or so, I think. So he's going to have to bounce to a 450 next year. So. SS24 Gabriel KTM were initially a European Championship development team, but now they're running a rider in MX2, and they might even be asked to run a rider in MXGP next year if KTM decides to keep Oliver on, sort of semi-factory equipment.
Circling back around to what started this a little bit with the Coenens, we've theorised this before. Do you think the assessment that, and yes, they do have a contract for next year and the year after, that much is clear. Do you think my guess that there must be a clause in there that means if they're not sent to the USA, they have some wiggle room, must be the fuel behind the Honda rumours? Because that's the only way that I can consider that the Coenens could just leave mid-contract. Because I can't think of a logical out otherwise.
There has to be a buyout. I mean, I think isn't there a buyout in pretty much in many contracts?
But you never see that. You never see that utilised because it's normally so costly and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, if KTM, say, for example, have to let them go, or the Coenens are adamant about exercising some sort of, we're speculating, some sort of vulnerability in the contract, then what can you do? I think also the situation around the Coenens is what's probably delaying the commitment to Jeffrey Herlings.
Yeah, because I think that's very much for debate. If you have the Coenens, do you need Jeffrey and vice versa? Also interesting, I've just thought, there is, as we alluded to, some speculation as to what the KTM teams will look like next year, whether there is still a full factory team, etc., etc. Hard to imagine Herlings going to Dakali, say. I would imagine that if Herlings stays KTM, very much it would be strongly suggested that the team remains in a similar form. No?
Well, I mean, some reorganization is going to be necessary. And the thing is, you can't even say to Dakali, can you be like a factory development team? And that word again, development, because, the team kind of has its own partners. I mean, somebody like Fly Racing at the moment is getting fantastic exposure because they're being worn by the Coenens and also Längenfelder. I mean, the German has struggled. I think he's only put 2 back-to-back podium finishes in a row on one occasion this season. So he's having a bit of a splutter, even though he's right up there in the standings. How will Fly Racing will feel about having Marc-Antoine Rossi, Kaz Volk, and another rider, in the Ducati setup for next year? Yes, they could be trying to get podium results or GP wins in MX2, but it's not the same thing. And the reason we're banging on about this, Lewis, I think for so long, is just the fact that KTM is such a prominent part of this paddock.
Is that something you've heard potentially, that Ducati could become more of a...
No,
okay,
not at all. I mean, if anything, there was the craziest rumor I heard was that Ducati would be, running Ducatis.
No, that's not going away. That's been around a while. And it's one of those rumors where I dismissed it, and the fact that it won't go away is kind of making me question it more and more.
Well, Amadi, Corrado and Marco, who are sort of have been running the Ducati project for well over a year now, they have another contract to run in 2026.
Could they become
unless
MX2
Ducati... Well, I don't know. Unless Ducati suddenly have loads of money and they can have 2 Grand Prix teams... I also don't know the situation of contract between Ducati and KTM off the top of my head, but I can't see Ducati suddenly becoming red again, before 2027. And also Ducati split, with Yamaha in 2009, and they've been KTM ever since. I don't think it's, for all the prestige around Ducati being like an Italian brand or whatever else, I wouldn't have thought it's such an easy move for the Ducati family to make.
I can't remember who brought this rumour to my door. It was ages ago. But someone did tell me that Ducati were very keen to move away from the Maddie program. And I don't know why. Those rumours have never come with an explanation. But there was quite a lot of smoke around that fire at one point.
It's still green shoots. It's still green shoots for Ducati. I mean, we've been talking about how well they've been doing. They've taken 2 podium finishes already. But, I quickly talked to Jeremy Seau. I didn't see much of him this weekend. But from what I understand, Ducati had their first factory engine setting in place since France. Up until then, they've been running stock stuff. So, that's just an example of how, we've got to sort of round 10 and, they've only just getting their sort of first serious upgrades to the race package.
So the biggest, circling back to KTM, the biggest names that are questionable there are Jeffrey, Lucas, Sasha, and Simon. Of those 4, I think I bet on Jeffrey. If I have to bet on one being in KTM colours next year, I bet on Jeffrey. Because Honda rumours are persistent with the Coenens, and I have spoken to enough people and heard enough to know that that's a very real situation. And Simon, by all accounts, you were the first to bring this to us, is quite adamant that he wants out of KTM for whatever reason. Whereas Jeffrey, if the money's right, he would love to stay, I think.
I didn't speak to Simon. I didn't really speak to anyone around him, so I don't really know if those sort of rumours are true, if he's adamant about leaving KTM. One thing is for sure, if you look at the results, then you don't really want to be on another bike in MX2, perhaps a Triumph, but that's it. I mean, you don't really want to be on a Japanese motorcycle, the sad thing is at the moment. I mean, Honda, yes, but the gossip is that, Längenfelder's dissatisfaction is because, he's almost like a gooseberry. He's been sort of marginalized slightly for the Coenen brothers and the Ducati setup, which, knowing the Ducatis, I find that really hard to believe. But if Simon has this idea in his head, then then what are you going to do to change it? He's still in play for the World Championship, so it's not like he's in mid-top 10 obscurity. Perhaps he has a complaint about the motorcycle or the setting. That's another thing altogether. But then, if he ends up signing for, say, Honda, which is the most competitive MX2 bike apart from of the Japanese, then he's going to be back in theory with the Coenen. So, I don't know. But, I mean, you called Jeffrey. I do as well. I mean, I think it's 16 seasons they're together. I think it'll be tough for him to... he's almost like institutionalized, I think, at KTM. He's given the freedom to run his own kind of training and preparation setup. He's surrounded by familiar people that have been there his whole career. For the second time this season, Dirk Grubel was back in the paddock.
Oh, really? I love that.
Former team manager. Yes,
I'm even more jealous you were there now.
Yeah, I mean, so Jeffrey was surrounded by Dirk, Valentina, Joel Smets, his practice mechanic Dave Needham. There's people there that give him his little nest of comfort. And I think if he suddenly landed in Fantic or in Yamaha, The talk about that was that Yamaha don't have the means to match his salary expectations because they have Maxime Renault under contract for another year. What they do about their second rider is up in the air. I didn't hear much about that. I mean, Calvin Verlanderen rode pretty well. In Teutschenthal, he's not doing a bad job, and you'd think he'll be the guy that gets the nod for a second rider. I think it's just about Jeffrey's asking price and KTM saying, what are we willing to do here?
Well, I think the price went up a little bit after the events of Sunday. And also, let's not put it past Jeffrey, who may or may not have this meeting with KTM scheduled coming up. Is it a coincidence that just on the eve of that, he suddenly starts winning again? Knowing Jeffrey like we do, it's possible that this was all orchestrated and it was time to finalise the checks. No, but it's okay.
Yeah.
So let's play this game. If I had to be a betting man right now, the Coenens are at Honda, Längenfelder's at Triumph with Farres because he's on a 2-year deal. Honda, we theorised as well, like weeks ago, that Fernandez and Zanchi were out. So I do think the Honda and Tim will figure it out. So I think Honda will be Tim, Coenens, and Latta. KTM, I honestly don't know beyond Herlings. Volk, I guess, is a good shout, but honestly, again, it kind of underlines why KTM need Herlings, because I don't see a lot of surefire great options there for KTM besides old reliable, or grandpa as he likes to call himself now. And then Yamaha Renault will stay, obviously. I do think Gertz would leave, and I would like to think that Vlandrin would get another shot. Kawasaki Roman will stay. Jonass, the team has an option on Jonass for next year, which I could really see going either way. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. Again, I don't know who they would get if not to get, or if they don't keep Jonass. I guess Fernandez looms in the paddock. I've heard rumours that he could be of interest to KTM, but I put that to someone and they said absolutely not. But I could see him being of interest to Kawasaki because although it was a different setup, when Fernandez first moved to the 450, wasn't it you who was championing him to the MX Eska Kawasaki wing at that time?
What you mean the now Triumph team?
Yeah, I swear I remember when Ruben was moving to the 450, you were trying to convince Kawasaki to sign him because you've always had this weird little thing for Ruben.
No, because they were out by then. I mean, their last season was 21. So, and Fernandez...
No, okay, this was before... This was when he was on a Yamaha. You were trying to convince him that he was worth a shot on a 450 prematurely.
I thought he was. He was, a really promising kind of rookie or big guy for a 450. I still think that's the case. I mean, I think he'll be a decent bet. I don't think he'll be overly expensive either. He's a Grand Prix winner. So, I mean, I don't think he should be locked out at KTM either. If Fernandez doesn't get like a half-decent ride for 2026, then, I'm kind of at a loss. I don't even really know why Honda have elected to, look the other way. I just... Right now, I know there's a play for the Coenens or there's interest in them, but I can't see it working out. And, like you said, I think Geiger would just agree a fresh deal. And then, who do you take as a second rider there? That's the question.
I mean, we've played this game a little bit in the past, but I do think that as a whole, the Ruben HRC experiment started with so much promise with that GP win in Argentina, but hasn't yielded much else. I don't know. I could understand if it's time to move on because I don't know if there's really been much else to call upon as positive memories or signs of light.
Did you see his crash?
Yes, I suspect he won't make it to Latvia because that was vicious.
Well, he was initially believed to have broken his collarbone, but they couldn't find anything on the scans at the circuit, so he went for another scan in Halle, the nearby city, and also that apparently came back okay, according to the last word in the press room on Sunday night. So perhaps he's all right, but he couldn't take part, he couldn't complete the race program. So we'll have to see. But yeah, it'll be a bit of a debacle if HRC don't have any riders going to Kegums. But I mean, yeah, it's like I said, Lewis, it was just a lot to try and get your head around, and also, a lot of questions being asked. So it was quite, like I say, head spinning to get a handle on everything. It was interesting watching the riders, and if we talk about Herlings because he won the Grand Prix as 108th, then he spoke a little bit afterwards about how, we know that he used the first part of the season as his pre-season to get fit and up to speed, but he also had to develop the bike because there's now this noise regulation of 109 decibels, which means, the teams have had to work with new exhaust systems, new airbox design, new electronics to try and maintain the same power and potential out of the gate while also, making the bikes quieter. And that was where Herlings also had to do some development. And, it was notable that his starts were, strong in Teutschenthal the weekend and were the foundation of this GP success. They were not too bad in France as well, in an A, at least in one moto. But, in the first race, we had one of those typical situations where we had Lucas Coenen leading, who seems to have got his starts now. He's very sort of Jorge Prado in that aspect. And then Herlings behind in second place. You had Roman Febvre and then other rider, who was it? Who was he trying to pass? Was it Vlanderen, I think? There were four riders there circulating close together. I mean, Febvre was just sort of chewing his lip in frustration. He admitted as much afterwards. He just tried everything to try and find a pass in place. Couldn't make it happen, was making little mistakes and losing a few meters, gaining a few meters. And while it looked like a cagey, tense race, you could see that the riders were almost like contained. It wasn't like they could really go for it because, the track was that limiting. And I did love watching the contrast between Herlings, who I think is 30 now, and Coenen, 12 years younger than him. And Coenen was able to sort of lead from start to finish, take that moto victory. I think he's got the most moto wins now for the season. And, the kid just exudes confidence. I mean, he's just sort of bouncing around the paddock, even watching him after that race sort of head off towards an autograph signing. He's just full of life. And I remember thinking it's going to take quite some mission by Febvre to get points back on him, because I think for the second GP or the third GP in a row, Coenen either gobbled at his points lead or matched it. Febvre didn't get the starts. He was annoyed for that. And then Herlings used all the old man experience in the second moto just to find one place on the track to pass both Febvre and then Coenen and get that second moto win. And it was heartwarming, actually, to watch him sort of make that move and work it out and be able to really seize the moment, because Teutschenthal hasn't been the best of tracks for him.
Yeah, that's the hilarious part of all of this. Last week, I said that Herlings would win in Latvia and just said I wanted him to survive Teutschenthal, because in the same vein as Lockett, Teutschenthal has been horrific for him. Just, there's a black cloud that hovers above the German facility when it comes to number 84. So it's quite poetic in a way that this marks his return to the top of the sport once more. And I would double down even more so now on my Latvia prediction. I think that's a sure thing. And congratulations to Jeffrey. Of course, it was emotional to watch. You were blessed to be there on the day where he rose again. It was our version of Easter Sunday as he rose again. Or whatever day that happened, Monday. I don't know what I'm saying. I probably shouldn't.
I think he should buy me a Red Bull, because I think 2 years ago was it? I turned up in Spain, one of my few GP appearances that year, and that's when he broke the record for taking GP wins. And I turn up in 2025, and there he is, Lewis. So I don't think you can lay much claim to being his lucky charm anymore.
Yeah, I don't have many friends. Please don't try and oust me with the ones I do have. Although I was very aware over the weekend that you'd be slithering around a paddock trying to pick up my friends, turn them against me and make them Team Adam. I was very...
No. Please try and use a different adjective. I was not slithering anywhere. Actually, it was slithering, because on Sunday the weather was just mental. I got a slightly red face because it was so hot on Saturday. So hot. I mean, it wasn't like Hangtown levels. It was like 27 degrees. But yeah, and then Sunday we got wet walking to the press room. Then the sun came out and boiled everyone, and then it pissed down again for the second motos. So, I was slithering to a degree, yes.
Okay, so there we go. Top journalist Lewis, accurate once again in his assessment of the event. But no, it was honestly amazing to see Herlings get back on top, and I think it's going to add an interesting element to the championship moving forward, because as he gets better, I think he will push both Coenen and Febvre, and that could prompt mistakes from either side. He will add a certain layer of pressure, I think, to proceedings, and it will be interesting to see how both riders, who have a tendency to maybe ride over their head when they don't need to, react. Because in theory, they should just kind of let Herlings get on with it on the days where they need to do that. I just don't have full faith that they have the ability.
There were a couple of comments that people were surprised that he waved Febvre through in France the week before. The reaction to that was, I think, slightly alarming. I think if Jeffrey had been off the pace and not able to go with Febvre and Coenen the past weekend in Germany, then it wouldn't have looked great for him. Of course, he had arm pump in One, and that's what he said. But I think you can be clever at letting a rider past if you're kind of in the way or holding him up without kind of blatantly saying, you're quicker than me, off you go. So I think, Herlings produced the right performance at the right time, and he really maximized the slower, rougher, more greasy track in the second moto to get the job done. So, yes, whether he gets it, he'll win more races. Whether he really gets involved in this championship hunt and how much he wants to help Coenen is another thing. Coenen and Febvre, I didn't see it, but I was told they kind of squared up in time practice after they sort of collided briefly by the pit lane. And also, there was talk that Coenen was not very happy with Herlings' bid to grab the lead through that sort of line he had over the jump near the top of the circuit in the second moto. So I don't know, I wouldn't call it beef, very far from it, but there are little sparks there that, tension is creeping up.
Well, again, across that trio, there's a lot of emotion there. In contrast, someone like Tim, I feel, is fairly level-headed, at least public-facing. But there's been many an occasion where Romain has let his emotions boil over and made them known. Lucas, we've had instances of that, and Jeffrey's Jeffrey. So, yeah. But no, great to see him back on top. He's 268 points down in the championship. So do you want to discuss that, or do we call it a day on Jeffrey's title chances?
I thought you mentioned that in one episode, then backtracked in shame the following podcast. Yeah, you want to sort of flare it up again?
I don't know. He did take 10 points out of Febvre. So that's, if he continues that way.
How much is he behind? 268. And there's a maximum of 600 to be won.
So you're telling me there's a chance? No.
Yeah, no. Jim Carrey Dumb and Dumber level of chance.
There's no chance. But what there is a chance is that you'll snap your levers. If you are snapping levers, that's weak and outdated. Polisport's APT unbreakable levers bend on impact, bend back to their original shape, and let you keep riding. With a stainless steel core built for war, they are rock solid strong and designed to match the OEM levers shape and specs. The Polisport's APT unbreakable levers stand up to every challenge. Thank you to Polisport, and we'll be running some competitions with Polisport here coming up. We may even get involved on social media. We may even involve Kevin Horgmo. We're maybe doing a lot with Polisport, so stay tuned for that. Very exciting indeed. And we will see who, much like the levers, doesn't break in this title fight between Coenen and Febvre. Although I do feel as though, to a degree, Teutschenthal was a turning point where Coenen made it very known that he can run down this advantage that Febvre has. I think it's down to 36 now. Coenen took 11 out of Febvre. There's now the Herlings factor. He, of course, helped Coenen to a degree. I think it's time to fire up the MXGP title battle discussion once more. Or is that a bit overzealous of me?
No. I think that's fair. First of all, 6 out of 10 for the read. I thought the transitions were the best part.
The beginning was
not quite as good as last week.
The beginning was like a 9 out of 10. The second half was like a 2 out of 10. So 6 out of 10 is fine.
And when you said lever, is that an American thing?
I don't know, Adam. I'm so confused about what names to call stuff, because I don't know. I'm so honestly,
Okay.
I doubt myself over every word now. Said to someone yesterday, I'm going to get a Satsuma, and they said, "What's that?" And I was like, "I don't know. Is that not the word?"
Yeah, a Mandarin.
Mandarin, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah,
I'm struggling with life.
An orange. If you're saying orange is part of the same family, and then you can't go wrong.
Not specific enough to me. But speaking of orange, I'd like to just little tease. Lewis and his friend Jeffrey are working on something. I'm very hopeful that it happens. Stay tuned.
What,
the
a
teaser.
2026 contract?
No, something. The cryptic clue would be reunited, and it feels so good. So we'll see.
Goodness, right,
Yes.
okay. So you're finally going to come to a GP. Have you booked travel for Lommel yet?
No, I need to figure that out. I need
Don't
to
sit on it, otherwise you're going to be paying more money.
figure out a lot. It's I think as a conversation that you had in a paddock may have alluded to, I really need to sort my life out. So
Yes.
I'm working on that. But it's nice to know that people had spotted that from the other side of the world, despite being very busy themselves.
Listen, I have a question for you. Did you watch the races, or did you see just bits of it, or did you watch the highlights? What did you think of how the track looked?
First of all, in a similar vein to Erne, yes, I understand the criticism of the fact that it's hard to pass, it's maybe a little dated, but copy and paste what I said last week. Teutschenthal does carry some magic to me. That is MXGP. You're not finding tracks like that anywhere else. I like the vibe. I like the crowd placement. So, yes, I do understand its detractions, but I do celebrate its positives as well. Not as much as Erne, but in a similar vein. I was very surprised at the magnitude of the track changes, because typically with these old school venues, a change is just a nip and a tuck. This was almost unrecognizable in some places. Riders told me it wasn't better. I think the right-hander into the waves into a left-hander was just very follow the leader. Doesn't really open it up much. I think to make this reference again, I think Stevie Wonder could have seen that when designing it on the track map. But Stevie Wonder, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. I think he could have seen that himself. But I applaud the effort. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of where the track changes were, because I feel like that was maybe Teutschenthal's most iconic section. And actually, over the weekend, I found myself wishing we could just go back to the way it used to be with the old Teutschenthal start. Again, controversial. Always caused some crashes. I remember Antoine Mayo going down there twice in two motos in 2005, maybe. But I feel like we're losing the Teutschenthal charm a little bit. So,
well, yes, I would agree. Track prep seemed to be better than usual, even though sort of Roman Febvre was pretty scathing, saying, the way that the soil's prepared has a lot to do with the way the lines develop. There was a lack of kind of berms or banks on the outside, so riders really couldn't use that as an effective line. The new layout added, extended the lap time, but then this seems like the criticism or the observation that most riders have recently for MXGP tracks is just the busyness of it. I mean, I don't know whether that's a ploy to slow down, the general speed, because that's how it always was in the past. But I think, the absence of just a normal straight section, means that you don't really have outbraking opportunities. And, passes tend to happen aggressively. I think that's what Lucas felt with Herlings' move, the way he lined him up similar to Febvre and the second moto in the wet. But I thought the track was better prepared than it's been in the past, for sure. But then, like you say, there's a certain kind of, it's very restricted. It's kind of like Imola for Formula One. There's only so much they can do within the walls of the facility there. And Teutschenthal's the same. There was a massive crowd. I mean, Saturday it was packed. We were kind of looking around the whole facility. There must have been sort of, 15, 20,000 people there, because it was extremely busy. Which is a pretty decent attendance. It didn't obviously look as congested on Sunday due to the weather, but I thought it was, by all accounts, a pretty effective stage for racing.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want to see it go away. It's kind of, I think, the theme here. No?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it's better than Geldorf, which is the only other sort of serious option in Germany that I know. But maybe sort of German fans or any listening to this will be screaming, of another venue that we're not thinking of.
No, I don't think there is one. I mean, Lausitzring? I mean, that says it all. The fact that the year that they couldn't run Teutschenthal, they had to go to Lausitzring, that says a lot about the fact that there aren't really other feasible options. Ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is, yes, if Teutschenthal went away and was replaced by Matchams, then cool. But ultimately, if Teutschenthal goes away, it's being replaced by somewhere like Mantova. And I choose Teutschenthal. So...
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But if it has to stay in Germany, and Germany love their motorcycle racing, Sachsenring and the MotoGP is sold out every year, hundreds of thousands of people across the weekend, and Germany as well. I mean, the Lagenfelder effect, and what had previously been the Max Nagel and Ken Roczen effect, bringing people through the gate, that can't be understated. And Lausitzring was a purpose-built track, a temporary build in a motorsport kind of arena, an oval. It was also the project of a wealthy benefactor who gave it a go once and decided not to do it again. We have had a couple of Grand Prix in Geldorf. I want to say 2009 or 10 was the last one.
11, I think. Wasn't that where Roczen won the title?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so it'd be 11. I remember Stephen Frossard taking
a knee injury. I think they went there 12 as well. Maybe not. 11 for sure. Maybe 12.
Did Evgeny Bobryshev win a GP there?
No, that was Teutschenthal.
I seem to remember Honda. No. I know he won in Teutschenthal, but I think...
no, but that was his only one.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
One and done.
Yes, one and done. Brian Jorgensen as well. Same team, same bike.
Yeah, both won ones as well.
I want to say.
Yeah.
Yes. Weirdo results in Teutschenthal. Kender Dijker.
But that's some of the magic as well. Yeah, on Rishi
Yamaha. Yeah.
Which is Kender Dijker's Rishi Yamaha period is kind of forgotten history, I feel. Like, who remembers that? No one. But somehow he pulled out a GP win. There must be another one. This is fun.
Wasn't he frozen out of Suzuki and had to go somewhere, or he took that contract for a year and it was just a money thing? I can't remember.
Well, I wasn't around at that time, but I just kind of took it as he'd run his course at Suzuki and that was the best option. That was kind of my assumption.
Another one for you. I think David Philipparts in 07. No, yes, that's right. David Philipparts, because Ben Townley was the first rider to win in MX2 and MXGP in 2005. And then I think Philipparts did it. He was the next one to do it.
Yes. I think that was his first.
Both on KTM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, see, this is where we like Teutschenthal. It brings out a lot of good stuff. Of course, it brings out bad stuff as well. Just ask Jeffrey Herlings, who's spent many a time in the medical centre at this facility.
Yeah. Broken his collarbone, broken his neck.
And then even, I said this on LVK yesterday, but even 2012, when he won the championship, Teutschenthal was the last round and he DNF'd the first moto. So, like, not even a crash, but, like, just weirdo, bad aura at the facility. So, Coenen or Febvre for the championship? Still Febvre, or...?
It's difficult, because Coenen's chipping away. Febvre was not too happy with that result. He was pissed off with his starts, and he was actually saying, due to the kind of limitations of the track, he's looking forward to get back into the sand, because he says, at least we can find places to pass then. And we know that Coenen's also pretty fast in the sand. So if Romain fancies his chances of going toe-to-toe with Lucas Coenen, again, a rider sort of substantially younger than him, then, he's still in a confident mood. I did a nice interview with him for quite a long time on Friday because things are aligning nicely. 2015 was his first championship, 10 years on. But I think I'll still go for the experience, Lewis. I think Lucas, of course, is going to win more motos as the season goes on. But, I think Lucas's setback or his moment of bad luck or something is still to come. And then Febvre will be there to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, I agree. I'll still go Febvre, but I do think it gets closer than this. I think that squeaky bum time for Febvre a little bit will come in the weeks to come.
Also, just add that at the end of the season is going to be a complete mystery. I think we said it on the last podcast, Turkey, China, Australia. That's going to be tough going, and it's also not like a circuits where lots of riders have lots of previous good form. So that also throws in the mystery element of it. And just to back up what I'm saying, Tim Geiger's misfortune in 2024 in China was, pretty much what allowed Jorge Prado to nip through and confirm his second title.
Have you noticed how Paul really hammers that final month on the broadcast every single week? And he always points out that you can go from Australia to the nations via the West Coast. Every week. It's like a script. It makes me laugh. It's almost on cue every single week. Anyway, Renault was kind of returned to form a little bit. Vlandrian was good, as you said, but I guess he twisted his knee in the second race, so he's going to get some checks. But he finished the race, so I don't think there's much to be concerned about.
I don't know about Calvin, but Maxim's, not riding. He's far from fit. He's got like an issue with his hip that he picked up. I think it was in the Swiss GP that he's been battling with. He finds it difficult on left-hand turns. And I think Renault basically is racing now as much through frustration as he is any kind of notion of professionalism or dedication. And the thing is, he pushed up the third in the championship thanks to that outing at Teutschenthal, and that's the best goal I think he can have for 2025, because Herlings now, if he starts motoring, is going to be picking up points and moving up the standings. He's currently 10th, I think.
Yeah. Herlings is only 107 down on Renault, so yeah, Herlings can get to third.
Renault said he's riding with less pain, because of that hip problem, but he's obviously not 100%, and they still need to work out some things on the bike. I think they said they have some more parts coming or some more ideas or solutions also in the next couple of GPs.
Interesting that they need this many solutions as well. Any Yamaha comments or reviews about the podcast, perhaps?
No.
Okay, good. Told you, nothing to worry about.
I mean, Yargo, I don't know. There was not really a great deal of chatter, but it's painfully obvious just from watching him that, he's missing confidence, and also he's not having an easy time with the bike. It actually reminded me quite a bit of Ben Watson's stint at Yamaha. The same kind of mire, really.
Well, speaking of Yargo, this is a perfect time to introduce a brand new segment, which is Social Media Fail of the Week. If I had a jingle, I'd push it. And this week, I'd like to give the gong to MXGP TV, who posted the highlights on YouTube with a thumbnail of the first turn from Villa La Angostura in 2024, which included Prado, who's no longer in the series, Villa La Angostura, which is no longer in the series, Argentina, which is far from Germany, and essentially was the ultimate example of how actually it is possible for people to fuck up something that's actually quite simple. So well done, MXGP TV.
In their defense, it was a nice photo.
It was up for like 2 hours as well, though. But this also reminded me, speaking of Yamaha as well, you remember we didn't do a podcast after Portugal because I was sick? Yes. And actually, to be clear, I'm a little bit sick today, which is why I'm not having the same emotional response, perhaps, to Herlings' win that others would expect me to have.
Well, that's why you need to book your Lommel flights, so it'll make you feel good.
Finalise the plan that me and Jeffrey have going.
Or the project that you don't want to tell anyone about.
It's a deal. We can't talk about it yet, but the world will be
excited.
Solid
podcasting, Lewis.
The world will be excited. So anyway, point being, we didn't do a podcast for Portugal week, but that was going to be the debut of Social Media Fail of the Week, because Yamaha Factory MXGP 2, Yamaha Factory MX2 posted on Instagram that weekend with the caption, Regulis, or however you say it, 47, started the qualifying day in Portugal with some good jumps. Fuck me. I'm so glad. Honestly, this is probably what made me sick. I was so angry. That was posted on the day of the Denver Supercross, and I was so angry because people are being paid. There is a man out there being paid to do that.
Or a lady.
No, we know who it is.
Oh, okay.
It's a man, unless I've got the wrong person. But started the qualifying day in Portugal with some good jumps. This is a world fucking championship. Lewis Hamilton started the Grand Prix with some good steering. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? So that's the inspiration for Social Media Fail of the Week. But unfortunately, because I was sick, they never got their awards. So just wanted to give them their dues. So if we're running a tally, so far we have Yamaha 1 point, and MXGP TV 1 point. Shockingly, no Yargo yet, but stay tuned. I'd imagine he'll feature. You could probably bet your bottom dollar that he'll feature real soon.
I'd love to contribute to this segment, Lewis, but I, being my age, the age that I am, I'm not combing social media that much. But I will keep a lookout, and I will vigorously react to the findings that you get, because I think they're extremely amusing.
Do you follow me on TikTok? I'm on TikTok now.
Are you on TikTok? I can't do TikTok. Isn't TikTok just like really pretty girls dancing?
And Lewis dancing.
Oh, right. Okay. One more reason not to download it.
Okay. No, but it's just ridiculous, and I don't understand why people can't just do their jobs well or even remotely mediocre, which seems to be a tall order for some. Back to the results. I'll make a jingle for that coming up. Congrats to Bogas, Gifting, and Panzer, who all maybe exceeded expectations with some good rides in 6th, 7th, 8th. Panzer getting a lot of attention and credibility at the moment, as he should. His name's been thrown around as in, like, when does he get more support? I honestly just think he won't, because truth be told, he's been putting in rides like this for some time. It's nothing new, I don't think, and he's never really yielded the support that maybe people think it deserves.
I think he's, I can't confirm this because I didn't really know, but from what I heard, he might have that Tanel Layoc, Brian Bogas development role for KTM, and that he's getting some bits or some support to ride with some weird shit. I think that might be the case. I mean, that's not explaining his form, because he's making good starts and he's riding well, and it's really like a family setup. I mean, there's nothing flashy about the way he's going Grand Prix racing, so he deserves every kind of accolade you could give him. And also, Slovenia's top rider in MXGP. That's something quite respectable.
Yeah, he's really sticking it to Tim. Although Tim is still holding the upper hand in the championship, but give it time, I guess. Ben got landed on, which was devastating for all of us, but fortunately he's okay. Yep. I'll just...
The award for most shocking accident goes to Paul's Jonass in the second moto, who only really came to my attention. He was kind of invisible in the race. I don't know what happened to him, but we suddenly saw a bike that was prone on one of the walkways next to a jump on the approach to one of the bridges, and it turns out that he had clattered one of the stanchions of the bridges and was there prone on the ground for quite some time. There was quite a bit of concern. I mean, he was taken away on a stretcher. It looked like he had some issue with his shoulder or his back. I haven't seen the Kawasaki press release before we're recording this. It's
broken shoulder blade and broken collarbone, which perhaps isn't
right.
Like, it could be worse. Is kind of my reaction to that.
Yeah, I mean, I heard someone say, "Well, that looks like him done then," which I thought was
for the season
harsh.
Or his career.
Maybe as a factory rider as well.
I could bet who said that to you, because that sounds a lot like someone who's a mutual friend of ours.
I can't. No. I can't. I honestly cannot remember where I heard it, but I pause. I don't know what to say. I mean, the list of injury and misfortune is staggering, and I struggle to think of a rider, with more ill luck in MXGP in the last half a decade. And I was speaking with our friend and illustrious colleague, Pascal Audiquer, who does some of the press work for Kawasaki and for, French media. I mean, he is, as we've said before, like a doyen of motocross media. He was saying he had done an interview with Paul's just before the GP, because Latvia is obviously next on the calendar, and Paul's had missed the GP for the last 3 years due to injury. And now he's going to be missing it for the 4th time. Hopefully he'll still be competing in 2026, and we'll get a chance to appease some of the Latvian fans, because understandably he's well liked and loved.
Well, to make it even more heartbreaking, this year and last year he got injured the week before his home GP.
Yeah.
Of course, Teutschenthal last year he dislocated his shoulder, and it was put in quite horrifically wrong, which created more damage. This injury perhaps sounds more clear-cut, which is good. But our thoughts go out to Pauls, who is a great guy, great friend of both of ours, and the series is better with him in it, and he certainly deserves better than this. MX2,
Yeah. Can we also just make a mention for Chiara Fontanesi as well? She won the WMX. No, it's 2 wins out of 3. And I asked her in the press conference afterwards, why are you still racing? I think she has 6 world championships. That's 2 more than Courtney Duncan. So she's the most successful, female motocrosser of all time. And she basically said that her goal is to become world champion again as a mother. She has 2 young daughters, and that's a different kind of milestone. Something distinctive by itself. And she still looks fast. She still looks fit, and she's got Grand Prix coming up most randomly, I think. Arnhem, so Sandy race in the Netherlands, which Lottie van Droonen, who's still winning the championship, won last year. Turkey, and then Australia. So the ladies are going to have to travel quite some distance to fulfill their calendar. But Fontanesi might make it 7, and with a distinction to all of her younger peers.
Yeah, well done to everyone in WMX.
Lewis, don't be dismissive. I can see your face.
That was nice.
Don't be cynical.
No, I don't have much to add, to be honest. I'm impressed, and once again, you've proven that you're the better man than I, that you went to the GP and asked a WMX question in the press conference. That's, once again, the professionalism knows no bounds, and we can all learn a thing or two from your actions.
Well, MX2, you got 3 riders split by 30-odd points at the top of the championship. It's getting confusing.
But what's not confusing, or what could be confusing, is I think Andrea Adamo wins this championship. I'm wholeheartedly there now, 100%.
Right. Oh,
and despite the feelings, the tension, that I may have it out for Andrea Adamo, it's not true. It's not true. This does not change my outlook on 2023 when he backed into the title with just 2 measly Grand Prix wins. And truth be told, probably... He backed into the title.
How did he back into the title? I thought he held the red plate most of the season.
No, but everyone got hurt.
Yeah, you can say that of Weber in 15.
Yeah, it was a Steve Ramon, Jordi Tixier style title. Fair? Fair. This year,
right, okay.
In contrast, is the complete opposite. Andrea is a 4-time Grand Prix winner in half the year, so he's doubled his 2023 win total in half the races, which kind of underlines my point that he wasn't as good in 2023 as he is now, proves why he's earned my admiration. And I think, as I said last week, with his consistency, I don't see how he's going to be beaten, because the gap to De Wolf has grown now, and Längenfelder is just a little bit of a risk for the reasons you mentioned earlier with the statistic about his back-to-back podium run.
Yeah, Kai still has the most podiums this season. I think it's 8 out of 10. But then, he had that injury with his ankle, I think, in France. And then he crashed in Germany and did something to his shoulder to the point where he wasn't sure if he was going to race. So to get that sort of podium finish, courtesy of his second motor performance, I think was very emotional for him and the team. And, I think he's had a little bit of a bash of confidence. Let's not also forget that De Wolf is racing in a series where the guy that he beat last year for the championship is now this fresh, amazing new star in MXGP, and closing in on sort of the red plate in the Premier class. And then, as we mentioned, the scenario for sort of the KTM riders is up in the air. So Kai, even though he's under contract and will be a Nestan rider in 2026, what he's riding and how competitive it's going to be, or the whole package is still a mystery. Maybe there are things that are playing on his mind. But his confidence has taken a dent. I think that's easy to see from the way he's riding. When you're riding hurt, of course, many riders say that it's far from ideal. But Adamo, to go back to your point, Lewis, he's matching the speed with the smarts, because he was locked into 4th place in the second moto, and it was a very static race. It was pretty boring, but just watching him very methodically tick away at the laps, and then when Sasha Coenen did the inevitable and crash out of the lead, then being P3 was enough for the GP win. You could say that Adamo backed into that GP win, but isn't half of, season successes about profiting from others' mistakes?
He didn't back into the GP win. He was a great guy, great rider. 2023 title, we can have a different conversation. But no, he was a deserving winner of the Grand Prix of Germany. Do we know what Adamo's doing next year?
No, I think he's also someone else who's waiting for a contract talk with KTM.
So he is up.
Aware. I think
far as
so.
you know. Okay, yeah, I'm not really tight with Adamo, so I don't really know the ins and outs, unfortunately. But maybe we can get there with time. Maybe we can
He's
get
riding
there.
great. I think he's in the form of his career.
Yes.
And
Again,
yeah,
that underlines
think
the
it would
2023 point.
Yeah, and also I don't think it would be too shabby a team if KTM locked in Herlings again and put Adamo onto a 450. I think he's only 21, so he could do like another 2 seasons on the 250.
Yeah, he could
But
be a multi-time world champion by the time he moves up. Who would have thought?
yeah, indeed.
Although don't forget that when Adamo first moved to KTM, his signature was hot property in the paddock. I think Yamaha were going after him. He was signed by KTM in like March because he was so hot property that they had no choice but to lock him down early because of someone else was going to slide in there. So
I can't. I really would advise people to read any interviews or listen to any chatter that he has because he's articulate and he's very thoughtful about racing. He and also in his second language, of course. And in the press conference in Teutschenthal as well, he was just talking about what he was missing last year and how he's managed to correct that for this year. He's a guy who thinks about motocross. He's not just out there abusing a throttle cable. He has a great synergy with Joel Smets, much in the same way that sort of Tom Vial had, Rene Hoffer had. It's a good combination, and it seems to be sort of back on 2023 level and even higher. So I think if you're a new fan, Lewis, then you're not sort of doing too badly. But it just depends on what DeWolf can fire back with, because we're going out to a few sandy tracks, and that should be Kai's natural habitat. And of course, Längenfelder, can he put some sort of sustained form together?
yeah, I say that about Adamo winning this championship. Latvia will be telling because if Kai can go 1-1-1 and take 15 points out of Adamo, then it's quite clearly game back on. But if Adamo can either maintain this weekend or even put more points on Kai, he could really put his foot down. I'm kind of dismissing Längenfelder there, but I just don't know. I don't know how to feel, to be honest, because it's so hot and cold, and there's been no evidence of a quality that you need to battle for a championship down the stretch. There's been evidence of a quality of qualities of a Grand Prix winner on any given weekend, of course. But as far as battling to the death for a championship, I don't see it at this point. What I do see is incredible custom fly racing gear. I thought they knocked it out of the park with that.
Yeah, definitely. Flies getting the exposure, aren't they, at the front of the field? Alpine Stars gear looked good as well, I have to say. I agree with your points, Lewis, but it's tough to explain a little bit why Liam Everts perhaps isn't getting the results that we expect. Liam's just getting himself into situations where he's getting tapped by the riders, or he's not quite finding the starts. That's something he needs to work out. But then, of course, that injury in China, I think that's still a factor. I think you need to give him a little bit more time just to build himself up to that sort of full race speed or confidence that he needs. And then you just got some of the younger, newer kids. I mean, Guillem Farres taking, a moto win. Okay, it was gifted to him by Sascha Koenen, who I really thought Sascha was making some headway in terms of managing a race a bit better. But that sort of, they don't get much more spectacular than that error in the second moto. And he has a strange habit of kind of not blaming the bike, but explaining how he's losing control and making these mistakes. He says the word tip over a bit too much for my liking. I think you could see the Decali sort of team in the paddock sort of shaking their heads when he sort of lost traction on the step up, ended up in the fence, and finally with his bike tangled in the camera tower. I mean, that gave Farres P1, and he didn't even know. I mean, all the photographers were waiting to take his picture over the finish line, and he just sort of subduedly jumped straight. And then he was informed by race officials that, yes, you have indeed won your first Grand Prix moto, and you're on the podium. Farres, like a couple of other riders, is racing his way back to fitness. I mean, he's missed so much track time over the last 2 years, but in the end proving to be like a shrew signature by Triumph. He's going to get better and will be better next year.
Yeah, I agree. Farres has a lot of potential, but questionable, I think, to sign him to a 2-year deal from Triumph. I think...
No, why?
I don't know. I think I would rather see... There's not really much evidence of Farres. There's evidence of him being very fast for a lap or whatever, but there's not much substance to that speed with as far as solid results. So maybe... Yeah, I just feel like it was
a bit give him to the end of the season. Give him to the end of the season and see what else he can do, because that also might be the click for him to go.
Yeah, I mean, there have been injuries, but fair to say that aside from Germany, he's been very underwhelming and nowhere near what most people would have expected, right? Like, I had fairly high expectations of him being a 4 to 6 guy and podium finisher on the regular. So
Yeah, I'm prepared to give him more time, and also I think next year I expect to see him as like a GP contender winner.
any insight as to why Latter has gotten better lately? I mean, I think that Erne and Teutschenthal suit him very well, but anything come from the paddock?
No, not really. I mean, his starts helped, and that was such a big part of the game at Teutschenthal. Yeah, but he looks faster. When he's on it, he's really on it. I mean, nobody could touch him. I think it was in the qualifying heat. Yeah, a promising Italian talent, it has to be said. And Zanchi, I think, tweaked his left knee on Saturday. So that was the reason why sort of his teammate wasn't in the motos.
Yeah,
But,
tough for HRC.
but Latter, I think, yeah, I think Latter is another one of those riders that, we have to sort of look at seriously. Thibaut Benistan, a rider didn't get starts as well. Uri Oliver, we talked about. I think he had an issue with his fuel cap in the first moto. He lost, he was running, I think, as high as 6 or 7. And then sort of he lost a couple of places where he had to fix that. And then I think in the second moto, he had an issue as well. Maybe with goggles. I mean, he tossed away his goggles quite early in the mud, obviously, which is an obvious setback. So, yeah, but there are some young guys coming.
Yep, and if you're a young guy coming and you're trying to reach that next level in your career, I would recommend heading to ProX Racing Parts to see all that they have to offer for your machine. That would be on pro-x.com. You can select your ride, year, make and model, and then see all that they have available. And there's a wide array of components, from electronics to suspension parts, steering parts, engine parts, fuel system stuff, carburetors, clutch components, brakes, cables, everything. Everything is at ProX, and it's what privateers rely on to bridge the gap to factories. And yeah, thank you to them for their support. A very solid, positive business that I'm very glad that we are aligned with, because I really believe in everything that they do there. So thank you to them for their support, and Polisport as well. Let's wrap up with this. Best conversation you had?
Best conversation.
And you can't say this one because it didn't happen in the paddock.
I have no idea, Lewis. There were so many. Can I say best interview instead?
Okay, best interview.
Roman Febvre, definitely, because it was a little bit of a career retrospective as well. I spoke with Lucas Coenen just before. We did a nice talk, but how much kind of life or career insight is an 18-year-old going to give you? So to go from that athlete to another one who's sort of tasted the harshness of motocross was, just highlights as well the differentiation between these two rivals. One an Austrian bike, one on a Japanese, one at one end of his career, one at the other, different ages, different cultures. Yeah, that was cool. I did a couple other pieces. Maxime Renault was great as usual, talking about his problems. I kind of left that one shaking my head thinking, how on earth is this guy still racing? But then also understanding why he is, because he's that pissed off with his poor luck with physical problems and health. And then I spoke with Oliver as well, and did that. Spoke to him in Catalan and was impressed by his mentality and his skill too. So good weekend, very busy. And yes, you need to make a point of getting across.
Okay, question 2. Person who you wish you had more time with, maybe only saw in passing, that you wish you would have liked to talk to more?
I saw from a distance Kevin Strybos. Didn't get to speak to him or say hello or convey any kind of greeting from your part.
Sad.
Didn't speak too much with Jeffrey, but then also didn't really want to bother him that much. And Jeremy Sewer as well. I saw him speeding by on his little electric scooter with his dog in place. We had a quick conversation when I found him in the pits, but didn't speak much else. And then Paul's as well, before he got injured. Didn't find a moment to say hello to him.
Wow, so you really
had a
turned
good
your
chat
back
with Sean
on my
Simpson,
friends?
so. Yes, yeah, I tried, Lewis, but not much luck.
Sean Simpson was good?
Yeah, speaking with Sean as well. I'm now sort of fully into the whole team manager role. Sean's always great, when it comes to observations and and also just giving an insight on, top level motocross.
My goal when I go back to a GP this year is to rebuild the Lewis and Sean bridge.
Yes, I think you have to.
Again, I will not be taking... I will take 50% of the credit for the bridge burning down, but if they want me to take more credit than that, then I'm out. So it may be heated. Okay, person... I don't know. I was going to say worst conversation, but you're not going to tell me that, are you? Who was the person that just was really terrible to talk to and just you wish you could have gotten away sooner? No, I can't think of another rapid fire question.
I could try to answer that, but...
Did you see Dan?
Dan wasn't there.
Oh.
I asked her to have an interview with Dan because I wanted to ask about the nations in Assen. Also how the Australian GP is shaping up because it's quite historic, of course, the first one, in a quarter of a century. But yeah, he wasn't there, so it will be an appointment made for Lommel. And also I just want to say a massive thanks to Anthony and the rest of the In-Front Motor Racing team because... turning up sort of for the first time in 2025 at the halfway stage of the season, they couldn't have been more helpful and more friendly. So that was more accommodating, which is important because the last thing you want to do is roll in and make expectations and ask for stuff and act like the big time Charlie when it's everything is very far from the truth. There's a lot of hardworking people in the media center, and those guys were packing up swiftly and getting straight onto Latvia.
How many jabs were made at you in the media room about, look who finally decided to turn up?
Oh, it's just water off a duck's back.
Okay, well, I knew I would have bet all my money that conversation happened at some point. And finally...
Well, get ready, because I'm sure it'll come your way. In fact, I'm looking forward to walking into the press room when you're going to be there.
Why?
Well, because you can take all the flack and the banter.
Okay. That's fine. I'll just go and nestle in with Jeffrey. Finally...
Oh, one more thing, Lewis. Can I just say that there were actually questions in the post-race press conference this time?
Because you were there?
So, no. There were other journalists. GateDrop.com were there asking questions, and another German guy as well. And I think it's absolutely compulsory and obligatory that you, for the first time ever, will ask questions in an MXGP press conference on your next visit. In fact, I'm going to preempt the media accreditation process by saying that you only get a pass if you take part in such event.
Well, they've also tried playing that game with me in America, and they've yet to succeed. So, but did you have a hard card?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say, I've got a hard card in that welcome centre, so they can try and take it away, but they're not going to have much luck. Final question. Is this podcast having an impact? Is anyone listening? Do people care?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think people are listening. Yes. There were some comments... mostly pleasant, a couple of derogatory ones.
Oh, I'd love to know.
But no, I mean, people like it. And the thing is as well, why are there not more MXGP podcasts? So it's the sport's deserving of more.
I mean, fucking hell. We've already done social media fail of the week. That's the quality that we get in this sport. So to expect further than good jumps is a stretch too far. Want to share any of the derogatory comments?
No.
Okay.
No, mainly just some interesting observations on your fandom
there's always
for
some
riders,
of those.
but that's it.
I could almost bet on who would have said it as well. Well, now I'm angry. No,
right. I'm not hiking up the paranoia.
No, we will. As soon as I press stop recording, we will be diving into this. But before then, thank you, ProX and Polisport, for their support of this podcast. It's much appreciated as always. And of course, there's always room for more if you'd like to get involved. So just let me know. We'd welcome you with open arms. We'll be back in 7 days' time to discuss the MXGP of Latvia at Kegums, a personal favourite of mine. Apologies for my subpar energy on this podcast. I'm deteriorating rapidly, but nonetheless, we got it done, and we couldn't skip another one, especially with Adam's voyage into the paddock. Neither of us will be in Latvia to disappoint, but we'll still be back in 7 days' time to talk a whole load of nonsense. Thanks for listening and watching, and we will see you then.